Well, thank you everybody for being here and skipping all the other wonderful sessions that you could have gone to and joining us with no time to waste from data warehousing to a modern data architecture in 4 easy steps. Yeah, just to get a little bit of a feel of who is in the room, we thought there are probably 2 kinds of groups here in the audience, and besides the people who are just here for moral support. Thank you, Sarah, for that. But that you've got the people who actually want to try to get that data warehouse into a modern data architecture in 4 easy sprints, or something similar to that. And I guess the second group would be of the group of people who are just thinking, who are these crazy guys with the ridiculous idea that you can actually move from a data warehouse to a modern data landscape in 4 easy steps. So maybe if I can see some hands, who actually wants to try to get the data, move from a data warehouse to a modern data architecture? And also in 4 sprints? Okay, yeah. Okay, and who just thinks that we're just crazy people? Sarah! Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Your moral support is good.
Yeah.
So, how many think that this is the Spark session? Oh, okay, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to disappoint both groups. Sorry for that in advance. We're not that crazy. And actually it is impossible in 4 easy sprints to move from a data warehouse that took years and years to build and go to a modern data landscape. But of course, we're probably going to tell you some things that you can do within 4 easy sprints and what it actually will take to do a more comprehensive strategy to move to a modern data landscape within your organization. So this is Andrea Capo di Casa, and I'm Hessel Miedema. We're both big data architects with Capgemini.
Put the pictures so if they want.
Are you sure you want to put the pictures on? Okay. And we also have a very large background in data warehousing. And we've both been designing, developing, and maintaining big enterprise data warehouses for many of our largest customers. So we know the frustrations that you can have when you have new requirements that you want to put in your data warehouse and isn't as flexible if you want to. And probably that's one of the reasons why you want to go to a modern data architecture. But this is not going to be a technical talk. And probably when you are moving towards a modern data architecture, you're going to run into some technical difficulties. But in all fairness, if you've got a good set of data engineers and a good relationship with your infrastructure team, they're relatively easy to resolve. It's just a technology kind of a thing. And we're also not going to tell you what a modern data architecture is. If you don't know yet, you can just Google it. Hortonworks will provide you a nice white paper that explain it much better than we ever could. But what we are going to talk about is about one real-life use case that we did with one of our biggest customers that actually took 12 weeks, so in 4 sprints, and it was very successful. I can tell you, it was not the whole data warehouse that we migrate. And then in the second part, Andrea will tell you more about what kind of considerations are there to move to a more comprehensive architectural landscape, if you will, where it's the modern data architecture is central and not the data warehouse. So it's when you start thinking about, I want to move to a modern data architecture. First you have to pick a really good use case, especially if you want to do it in 12 weeks. And thinking about what is a good use case, I think it's very important to realize what is the difference in philosophy behind the 2 different architectures. So if you're talking about a traditional enterprise data warehouse, you're talking about, I guess, an enterprise data model or a conformed data model that you can use across the organization. And one of the primary goals of that data model is to get to one version of the truth, if you can, or otherwise one version of the facts. Of course, when you move to a modern data architecture, you're more interested in getting results quickly. So your business users want to get insights within days rather than in months, which is a typical data warehouse time frame, I would say. What we have seen, I guess, at many customers is that when people have the notion we have to move to a modern data architecture because there's this golden mountain somewhere that we want to reach, they can take often they take two different approaches. And one approach is we're just going to do a traditional data warehousing kind of a scenario, but then on a Hadoop kind of an ecosystem. And the other one is, well, we've heard this thing that's called a data lake, and we're just going to try to move as quickly as we can to the data lake, push the data in, and then start using it. Both are destined for failure. Of course, if you're going to rebuild a data warehouse on top of Hadoop technology, you're going to run into the exact same issues because the data model is central. You're going to have the same kind of dependencies as you have in a traditional data warehouse. You're only doing it on a different set of technologies. And in all fairness, if you're trying to replicate that, probably it's better just to stick with your data warehouse because actually we've been developing data warehouses for, I don't know, 10, 20 years, 30 years. So actually the tools are quite, well, not me personally, but people. And the tooling is really mature for that specific use case. On the other side, if you just dump the data in the lake, and I think that we see even more often, you run in all these kind of issues because you dump the data in, and then maybe after a month, the first user starts using the data that has been put into Hive by your team. And actually, when they start using the data, they run in actually quite traditional kind of issues, like, where is my data? So they have to start looking for the right table or the right file in your modern data architecture. Or when they start using it, well, actually, it's not really in the shape that I expect it to be. Because, of course, they already have expectations, which is what do they have in their current data warehouse. But data modeling isn't really that core to the concept of a modern data architecture. And you run in all these kind of peculiar data warehousing things like data quality, master data, history tracking, which don't come out of the box on a modern data architecture. So that's why when you pick a use case, pick one that really makes sense. And so this is a specific use case that we did for a very large international consumer goods company, which really wanted to extend its marketing capabilities. So what they wanted to do is we want to do, well, you see it on the slides, real-time campaign monitoring, natural language processing, and all these kind of data science stuff to really understand their customers. And this is such a good first use case when you're transitioning to a data warehouse of a modern data architecture, because it's marketing data, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So financial data might not be the first candidate to pick up, and also because it's primarily about streaming data, which of course is difficult within your traditional environment, and unstructured or semi-structured as well. So if you picture use case, then of course, how are you going to do it? And if you've got 12 weeks to spend, we would recommend at least do 3 streams. And that is analytics and data science. It's about technology enablement and operating model design and implementation. And although probably inherently the most complex, the easiest to put into 4 sprints is actually the analytics and data science stuff. So these really smart guys are working with the data, doing all these kind of magic and finding these insights. But actually, you can put them in 4 sprints of 3 weeks. And so I put some of the high-level topics that we did in those sprints. So we started out with working on our social sensing capability, so actually getting the social media streaming data in. Then the second sprint was more focused on internal data that was there in the organization, like point of sales data, of course. Then you go to external data, and then in the final sprint, it's about, well, we're actually gonna perform some proper data science. And although we did put them in 4 sprints, actually it's more fluid than that, of course, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna talk to your product owner, some people who already have a lot of knowledge about marketing and brand management, and you're just going to create a backlog. And then, of course, you will have some dependencies because you cannot do some statistical work before you get the data, but it's actually quite a natural, agile Scrum process that you can follow. That's a little bit different for technology enablement. And when you start on this journey and you want to actually have something great after 12 weeks, there's quite a lot of pressure on putting all the right technology in place because you want to select the right tools and well, install it, use it, and of course use the accelerators and experience that, for example, a company like Hortonworks or a good system integrator can provide. And in this particular use case, we actually used Amazon Web Services to do it. Because I don't know how many of you guys work in large enterprises, but getting the bare metal in your data center within 12 weeks and then install Hadoop and everything, that's quite challenging. And that's why a platform like Amazon or Azure or any other cloud provider really works well. Of course, with social media data, that's a little bit easier than from other kind of data sets, which have more compliance and regulation issues, of course. So what is important is that if you only have 12 weeks, don't try to put it into sprints. Because actually, the activities that they're doing, they're not that business related. It's more like a supporting kind of set of activities. And so there's not really that much to gain for putting it in 3-week sprints. So you want to set up some infrastructure, you want to install some tools, etc. And the same thing is there for setting up the operating model as well. So what's very important to understand is that if you're switching from a data warehousing mindset to a modern data architecture one, is that also the way you communicate and work with your business, for example, supply and demand management, is going to be different. And so just setting up the technology is definitely not enough. And I think in our experience, the technology is actually, it's something you have to do, but it's not that difficult. The analytics and data science, well, those are really bright guys doing that stuff. So that's, in the end, that's going to work. Actually, most of the challenges will be actually in this lower side. It's about how do you work together, how do you get the new requirements, etc. So I guess this is more or less the end state. It's quite a lot of information on the slide, but I think what we really want to tell you here is that in the end we did manage to really create a quite astonishing platform within 12 weeks. You know, including the infrastructure setup, including the first real use cases that really use data science and natural language processing to measure the sentiment of social media outings. And but the most important thing, and actually we did it actually after 12 weeks, and that is that we set up physical consumer insight centers. And these are just, well, we started with 2 geographies. So in 2 places in the world, we created these rooms where our data scientists worked. And together with some brand managers who had a lot of knowledge about what kind of data they had for social media. And then business users would go into those rooms and start discussing their questions. And I think that is very important to to consider when you're going to this kind of architecture is that in a traditional way, very important roles are there for the business analyst and the data modeler. I think they are core to the solution of any enterprise data warehouse. And actually, they are the people who transform the raw data to the business insights, or at least they will try to structure the data in such a way that they can provide the insights that are needed. Those physical insight centers are actually the replacement of those functions. So it's where the people who understand the raw data connect to the business users and really start talking about, well, how can we get these insights? Which data sets do we have to combine? And I think it's really in this collaborative environment that the difference is being made. And of course, it's not always practical to create physical insight centers. So you could do it in like video conferencing or other kind of methods. But if you can, I would definitely recommend setting up these kind of collaborative environments. Of course, this is just one specific use case. And if your enterprise has the strategy to move to a holistic modern data architecture and transform more data warehouse environments, or because many departments might have a data warehouse environment, to that centralized environment, you have to come up with a more comprehensive strategy. And I guess I'm not the right person to talk on such a complex subject. So that's why I would like to give the floor to Andrea to tell you all about that.
Okay, I like when you lie. Anyway, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation about this. So we have seen Essel that has told us about a case that is, let's say, in all the terms world is very complex, but for the new world it's very simple. It's very simple to procure the technology to implement it. It's very easy to implement it, and thanks to DevOps methodologies and technologies can give you real business value in 12 weeks. However, we have always to remember that there is not just the technological part, there is an operational and there is also an organizational part of this. So let's see when we have a use case that is massively bigger, not that this one is very small. Okay, this is something that is actually the engine of the social marketing for one of the largest CPG companies in the world. But let's pick something that is probably more related to a classic use case of the transformations to modern architectures that are based to Hadoop. So this is an example. We have many customers that are doing something like this at the moment. Probably, if you have data warehouses in your company, you can relate to this. You have a data warehouse that has been growing in the last 15, 20, 25 years, whatever, and they grow in, let's say, complexity, total cost of ownership, fragmentation, etc. So here we have a large telco operator, and when I say large, I mean 15 million customers and 5 billion per year of revenues, with thousands of users. That was in a classic in the sense of nightmare situation in which they had a very complex infrastructure that arrived at the saturation point with many silos, a myriad of different systems to exploit the data that could not be joined, etc. Probably the worst thing of all was that all these systems could only be used 20% of the time, the CPU power for the users, okay, the guys that are paying for it. So thanks to a very successful migration, now the thing is kind of changed completely. So there was a radical simplification of the landscape, rationalization in a simple platform, in a simpler platform, but unified, where the users can essentially access their data and can join data that before were impossible to join. So again, I won't focus on the technical details of this because it will take probably another couple of presentations. Of course, if you want to know more details, just speak to Hessel or myself later. But what I want to tell you today, and just to essentially continue the conversation that we started with Hessel, is what are the other critical success factors when you wanted a smooth transition to these new architectures. So here there are three main aspects. The first one is what we poetically call the kill strategy. That is the strategy to decommission the old systems. Then, of course, at the center, the user is king. Okay, so we need to make sure that he understands the new platform, and not only that he loves the new platform, so he's happy to transition and to go to the new platform to use it. And then what we call the data concierge. The data concierge is a very new initiative that we are very proud of in Capgemini, and has the same meaning of the concierge that you find in an hotel. You go to a new city and you want to go to a good restaurant, but you don't have enough knowledge of the city, so you ask the concierge. The concierge has the knowledge and is helping you in simplifying your life and taking better decisions. And that's the idea. With all this data, you need someone that is helping you in making the most of them, in creating new joins that were simply impossible before. Let's go more in detail, a little bit more detail on these three elements. So the first one is about the decommissioning strategy. Okay. So there are many reasons. Okay. The first one is that there are a number of known unknowns. Okay. Known in the sense that we know that will happen. Unknowns, we don't know exactly what will happen. In general, when we migrate from a large estate, we have tens or hundreds of data marts, data warehouse, silos that we want to migrate. What happens? We can identify easily probably 80 to 90%. 5% are a little bit harder, but we can find them. 5% are a surprise. We need to be ready to take them into consideration. Okay? We cannot just ignore them. Okay? We need to have an agile process that is letting us to take into consideration this kind of surprises. Probably the most important one is that the users are focused on their business. They don't really care, except for specific users, about the technology, about the power of the Hadoop, etc. They just want to do their work. So they need to be in a position in which they trust the new architecture. So we need to make sure that we have a functional equivalence, that of course is a really ambiguous term. We need to make sure that there is a KPI that is telling me when I have migrated correctly, and then I can turn off my old system. Also, this is another aspect, is that the functional equivalence in general, that doesn't mean that the data of the old system should be like the new system. For the simple reason that you will discover that maybe some of the old systems were generating wrong data, so wrong data in some cases. So you need to have a process to identify what is the functional equivalence and have acceptance criteria that are well defined in advance. Okay. What are the activities? As I said, define the acceptance criteria. When can I turn off my old data warehouse that is costing me millions? Define the best migration roadmap. That means, okay, remember that the old data warehouse is still alive. So there will be upgrades, there will be changes, there will be maintenance, whatever. Okay, so we have to plan the end of the life for the legacy systems. And of course, we need to be ready with a very well-defined project management and governance stream. So we cannot leave it to improvisation. This is absolutely crucial because you will have most of the use cases to migrate to modern architectures is the total cost of ownership. If we cannot decommission the old systems because the users don't want to, because they fear the new, we cannot do it. So this is something that is as important as the technological aspect. Now, let's go to the user adoption strategy. So we have always to remember that from the user point of view, for how excited they can be, these new platforms are new. There will be new tools. Maybe they are replacing tools that they've been using for 5, 10, 20 years in some cases. And they don't know also the data. They don't know what to do with the new data. They don't know how to join them. So we need the activities that are making the users comfortable and happy with the new platform. Also, another thing that we've seen is that when the migration is going smooth, okay, it's going well, it's taken for granted. When there is an issue, it's panic, like doesn't work, nothing works, the new platform is broken, etc. So communication. On the opportunity side, we have all this data that are coming into our business platform with a size, with a variety of forms, and with a velocity that has never been possible in the human history before. Okay, so there are huge opportunities in terms of extracting value. Imagine, for example, you are a bank, and very soon, we have use cases in which the letters that you receive from the post, the cartacios, the paper mails, are scanned. There is a machine learning algorithm that is able to identify the customer that has sent that letter. There is an OCR that is transforming into text language, a sentiment analytics tool that is linking the sentiment analysis of this, and is linking it to the master data of the customer. Okay, so these things are complex for the majority of the users. So they need to understand that they can now start to use this data. They can get this data, this information quickly and in a much more agile way. Okay, so we need to speak about the potential of the new data, the new platforms. Now, in terms of the key activities, of course, communication, training. Okay, we need also to select the right users for the right roles. Not everybody will be a data mining specialist. Not everybody will be a data wrangler that likes to download all the possible new tools from the internet. So we need to select the power users, the users that are doing more simpler tasks but are able to use, for example, the SQL to interrogate the data, and people that are just need to understand how to use the new user interface, because we're going to a new tool rather than the traditional one. One of the most important and critical success factors is to create a community. So we have found that using business and IT champions is something that is accelerating dramatically the success of the transformation. Because you will have the business user that has in mind how to join the data. Okay? But also you have the technical guy that is able to do it in an efficient and performant way in the, in the platform. For example, in one of our customers, we had a very good data scientists, so not even like a final user, end users, but they were not able to leverage the technical power of the platform for the simple reason that it was too complicated to query the data. So essentially they did not use all the data that were available, and they resorted to offload some aggregated data into Excel, and they started to operate with something that didn't provide insight. So having a network of champions that are making famous this platform is absolutely crucial in making this a success. Also, the other part here, actually, it's very important. Another very key activity is to create a data lab. The data lab is essentially a kind of a sandbox where the users can play with the data, let's say the certified data, with adding the data that they download from the internet or their personal data. And this is another approach to make sure that the users feel comfortable and love the new architecture. Now, here we're going a little bit in the philosophical. We have this kind of Zen and the art of smooth transitioning. But it's simply saying that, again, the user adoption and the decommissioning strategy go hand in hand. So if you have users that understand and trust the new platform, we can be quicker in decommissioning the old platform, and vice versa. Okay, so this absolutely, it's absolutely crucial to plan and execute on these aspects in synergy, okay, at the same time. Now, let's go, after our very successful implementation of our big data architecture, everything is production, all our 10,000 of users are very happy. We need to make sure that this success is sustainable, is sustained. And this is where the data concierge is needed. We are now in a world where you will have all sorts of data, so variety, of all sorts of sizes, volume, and all sorts of speeds, velocity. We cannot rely on systems for retrieving and using the data that are essentially manual, okay, or essentially emails or oral knowledge that is transmitted. So we need a more industrial approach in attaching the metadata, attaching the right tags to the data that we are ingesting, and an easy way for the users to retrieve their data. Okay. So the way that we have organized this is with the data concierge that is organized as a series of services. The first one is the business information catalog service, that is, let's say, a kind of a Google where the users can interrogate the data and the metadata that they have in the system, and they can find what they want. Like, for example, all the tables or all the information that is telling them about fraudsters. So they will find tables, they will find queries, they will find snippets of queries, they will find the comments of the other users of the community on what is the best use for each table that is speaking about fraudsters. Maybe they will find some queries that are deprecated for a reason, because they're obsolete. They are sourced on data that are not really good. Then the second service is the ingestion service. So we need to make sure that we are only ingesting data that have enough quality. That doesn't mean that they are perfect. So if we're speaking about regulatory data, they must be perfect. If we're speaking about marketing data, they should be so and so. If we are speaking about data that are just for exploratory analysis, it doesn't really matter. But in any case, we need to make sure that we absolutely know what is the level of quality that is required. And we need to make sure that we tag this information with the rest of the information. Like, for example, we have a customer table. We make sure that is good enough for the user that is needed, or we assess which kind of user can be given to that table. And we link it to all the possible data that are in our estate. So we are ready for the interrogation. Then we have a distillation service when the atomic data, the granular data, are not, let's say, practical to be interrogated as they are. And so maybe we need a little bit more aggregation, filtration, etc., etc. We have the data science analysis in which we go a little bit further, and we need probably some sort of machine learning, data mining analysis that is a little bit more complicated. And in the end, the good old data operation services. We want to keep our room tidy. Okay, so these are the services that we have identified and are helping our customers to make the most of their modern architecture, because their internal customers are making the most of the application. So I think I can close it here, yeah. And I don't know, I will open the question. And thank you for your attention for the moment. Any questions? Yeah.
Just a comment. I really did appreciate the selected term of concierge.
Yeah.
Because we are trying at the company to put in place data governance. And governance is just quite a rude word. Nobody understands what it means. And with your words, concierge is just clear.
Okay, thank you. I take it as a compliment, all right? Okay. That's very kind of you.
Did you make up the words, Andrea?
No, that was Steve Jones, that is much bigger in this case. Any other questions? Okay, so can I make a question? How many of you find themselves in the, let's say, the start situation of the complex data warehouse and they wanted to migrate? How many of you have a very complex? Okay. And is there some volunteer that can tell us where are you in the journey of the migration?
Proof of concept.
Concept? Okay. Anybody else that is a little bit more down the line?
From ABN AMRO Bank.
Yeah.
Thousands of systems and different proof of concepts at this moment.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to combine all these different use cases and find a way to create one modeling platform.
Okay. So do you have anything in production already?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. So, but do you already plan not only the technological but also the user adoption, all these streams? Okay. So it's not something that you were expecting already addressed. So it's not something that you found particularly, let me say, unexpected. All these aspects that we have been addressing.
No, it's quite familiar.
Okay. Good.
Yes, or more?
Sorry.
Have you ever managed to kill the data warehouse?
With my hands. No.
Move 100% of modern data.
Yes, of course, you do it in small services. Okay. So you cannot, clearly, if you have 100,000, you don't wait for. But of course, you need to start with the right priorities. With the, let's say, low-hanging fruits, also because this is giving more momentum to your program, and so this is the way that we are doing it. But the crucial thing is to make sure that the users understand the moment in which, and they agree, the moment in which they can turn off the system. Okay. So there should be this agreement. Otherwise, it's complicated. You will always have someone that is complaining, and then you will have endless, reiteration in trying to understand why the reconciliation is not working. While if you do it up front, it's clearly easier because you have a contract, and once you have respected the contract, you're ready. Did it answer the? So
Did you manage to move everything into modern data architecture?
Well, we have customers that started and they have thousands of services. So the answer, the thousands, no. The hundreds, yes. So, but in any case, you are using an agile approach. okay, on this. That means that you move in a finite portions of your work. I don't think you can think, okay, I will do my 2,000 services overnight.
Right.
In terms of the data concierge,
Yep.
in a big data platform, is there any particular tools you'd recommend or you have used?
This is something that is, I mean, of course, we usually work with large customers. So it depends on their source and also on target architectures. I mean, it depends on their ecosystem in general, okay? But we don't have any tools that we recommend specifically. We are system integrators, so we work with all the major tools. Yep.
When you move services from the data warehouse to all the services, the necessity to have control dimensions is still the task of the data warehouse, isn't it?
Sorry.
Okay, you have to provide a master data, please
Yeah.
conform master data, which is called conform dimensions in the data warehouse. And when you move services from data warehouse to Hadoop,
Yep.
does it still is it still the task of the data warehouse to provide this master data with those conform dimensions in your opinion?
Okay, so initially, clearly, tactically, you can leave the master data in, it depends on how much data you're moving from the data warehouse to the modern architecture. So you can start leaving them there, because in any case, you have the transaction in the data warehouse, but eventually you have to move. Okay, so you can even make a copy, because in general, they are easy to move. Okay, so there are different strategies, but I would say eventually, of course, if you want to decommission, you have to move everything.
I guess just an additional service to your modern data architecture, which is your master data service.
Yes.
Because you want to leverage that master data in as many possible places as you can. So it's one of the more trickier parts to move, but that's definitely one thing that you want to move. All right, so I see the light is flashing red. Yeah. Well, one more question then.
Sorry, maybe I'm asking a question you already answered, but I was late. I'm interested in what role data modeling plays in the modern data architecture, basically.
So the role is a lot less than in data warehousing, and so it's actually more the responsibility of the data science services that you put on top of your data lake that are responsible for making sure that the data is modeled in a way that is usable and it is also being reused. But I guess that's also the reason why a master data service within your modern data architecture is so important, because actually it are these master data connection points that will connect the different data sets within your environment.
More specifically, are you still doing dimensional modeling? Are you still doing normalization? Are you still doing this type of exercise you're doing in the data warehouse?
Not by default. No. So if you don't have to, you don't do it. So of course, if there are definitely certain use cases that you still want to do it, because if you want to, for example, build an OLAP kind of an environment, you might want to do it. But in general, if there is no specific need to do it, I would hesitate to do it.
I mean, like that would be more precise. If your tool is based on BI, okay, it's a classic BI tool that works really well with star schema or Snowflake, you will need a layer that looks like a dimensional model. So you need to, okay? So it could be a virtual one, views on atomic data, or can be a materialized one if the performances are not good enough to have a visualized view. Yeah. Okay, so it depends. So I know that is a very consultant answer. It depends, but there is not. You have to organize the data at a certain point. Okay, I will not use a prescriptive approach. You must continue to do it. But if you have tools that work very well with let's say star schema or another modeling technique, I will go with there. Then,
so I guess your starting point is quite often just wide, flat tables, for example.
Well, I mean, modeling you do also to understand
So that's why the
Basically, it's the condensed knowledge of the data, basically. So how do you convey knowledge in data?
So that is a tricky point, and I think that is the reason why you want to have that collaboration between your data science team and the people who are actually using the end products to be very close, because this is definitely a pain point in a modern data architecture, and that is the specifically designed reason for a data warehouse. So you're gonna probably maybe drop some benefits from a data warehouse, but you get a lot of agility in return, and because it's quite core to the problem what you're asking, definitely. Right. We're massively over time.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Not really.